What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to the start of another portrait painting, old school style. That's what I'm going to call this. And why is it old school? It doesn't mean that I'm going to go and do a very careful transfer drawing and go through the classical process, all that stuff. No, it means by old school, it's going to be how I was initially taught to paint portraits. So you're going to see my upbringing of when I was a youngster, about 18, 19 years old. In fact, this palette, all this is dry here, by the way. This palette is that old. It's from when I was 18, 19 years old. About 14 years ago, so not that long ago, but still a decent time ago. And it's going to be some story time sharing as well as we start this painting. And of course, we're going to be using a Nelson Shanks, which is the reference over there. Nelson Shanks, of course, because Nelson Shanks was one of the best painters of the 20th century. And he was also the teacher of my teachers. And I got to meet him in real life and watch him paint in real life. So yes, I was quite lucky. Hey there, Tipu. Thanks for saying hello from Canada. Hey Monique, it's been a while since I've seen you. It's nice to have you here. All right, so what does old school mean? And oh, John, haven't seen you in a while. Hey, missed you, man. I hope you're doing all right. What does old school mean? It means I'm gonna be starting with, and I'm gonna be doing the entire thing with traditional oil paint, working with a wooden palette. I already told you the story of this palette. It's 14 years old. We're going to work on a gray toned cotton canvas, acrylic toned, approximately number 5 on the value scale relative to, I think it's the golden acrylic paint. I actually just mixed this value with some cheaper acrylic paints, but this is pretty much close to the value and the color that I was introduced to at Studio Incaminati. So I'm going to refer to Studio Incaminati quite a lot for this painting because that's where I was pretty much brought up. Studio Incaminati in Philadelphia, also Baltimore, Maryland, Zoll Studio, Paulden, Hamilton. But this start is going to be mainly the way that Studio Incaminati approaches it. So we're going to use direct painting. This is quite hard to do now that I've done a painting with my left hand in the past. It's actually very hard to move your hand in this way unless you've done tons of paintings in the past. So I'm working with simple shapes, working with angles. I'm thinning out the paint with odorless mineral spirits, just like I used to in the past. This is an Umber drawing. That, when you see that line like that, means that I used too much solvent. So I'm going to dab it on paper towel a little bit, and we're going to go back to these shapes. So pretty much if you watch anyone do a demo that attended or is an instructor or affiliated in any way with Studio Incaminati in Philadelphia, you are going to see the brush move quite quickly. You're going to see a lot of brush strokes, a lot of messy things like this. Of course, that's an exaggeration, but you're going to see, or maybe it isn't, you're going to see a lot of movements. That's what you're going to see. And Nelson Shanks taught by demonstration, which is the way that I do these videos for you through demonstration. Now, the big thing about this is the freedom of being able to move your arm this way, and it doesn't come naturally. When I started at Studio Incaminati, and this is not a paid promotion for that place. Oh, thanks, Monique. Yeah, movement is good. It's refreshing. This is not a paid promotion for Studio Incaminati. It's just where I went a long time ago. That's where I went to get educated, and also of course Baltimore, Maryland. Paul and Hamilton, though he doesn't start like this, he starts with a more controlled, deliberate kind of drawing, like I usually do. I don't usually move the brush around this fast anymore, but it's quite important to go back to the roots once in a while and show you where I came from. And a bit of story time, I guess. So now that we have the basic idea of the shapes, let's talk about the consistency of the paint and why I'm using raw umber. And actually what they used in the past was burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, and they would make their brown with burnt sienna ultramarine blue rather than just use umber. Paulden Hamilton, my teacher from Baltimore, he was the one that introduced using just umber to draw. He was the one that introduced the word umber sketch to me. I attribute that to Paulden Hamilton. Studio Incominati refers this to open grisaille. Some terminology for you there. Open grisaille. Grisaille, meaning just gray, the color gray, is what you do to create an underpainting. An underpainting, for those of you that don't know, if in case anybody here doesn't know, is basically the underwear of a painting. It's what's underneath of all of the color. As has been told many times before, value does all the work and color gets all the credit. What that means is value is what creates the illusion of something looking real. Color is what the untrained person sees and marvels at. How did that person come up with that color? That's not the right question. The right question is, how did they come up with that value, that shape, all that stuff? That's the important stuff. Now, umber is pretty useful because it dries fast if you're using traditional paints. If you're using, and this is a lot of jibber jabber or whatever, this is a lot of movement for absolutely nothing. So let's go ahead and just go right into the more technical stuff. And again, using this loose fashion that was taught to me at Studio in Caminati. And the way that they have a level system, which level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Level 1 is your first year, level 2 is your second year, and so on and so forth. And level 1, when you begin there, you do short figure drawings, short poses, using your arm, and you get used to that movement, right? You get used to moving your arm around. You see, when I use my left hand, which I now know how to do, I'm more careful with my left hand because I can't move my left hand this way. So those of you that might be new to painting, that is muscle memory that I have developed over the years. Being able to move my arm that way, that does not come naturally. As you see, if I'm painting, if I'm drawing with my left hand, I have to be more attentive to my arm, whereas my correct arm, my right arm, is used to that motion, the rapid movement that generates the shapes that you see me use. That kind of practice was developed through level 1 at Studio Incominati, which was basically 2-minute poses. I don't like the word basically. It was definitively 2-minute poses, 2-minute gesture poses, figure drawing for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. 5 days a week. Now that's more practice moving your arm than anything else in all of painting and all of drawing. The way that they taught me is exactly the same way that I teach my students when they're painting from photographs like this, old master paintings. And I'm going to refer to Nelson as an old master because we're in the future now relative to my upbringing. So Nelson was one of the very best painters at combining both the Italian, the Florence Academy way of working with shapes analytically and the color expressionism used by Henry Henchy. Um, hey Beanpot, welcome. Thanks for the happy Thanksgiving. Yeah, happy almost Thanksgiving, everyone. It's about to be Thanksgiving soon, and it is time for me to gain some more weight that I don't need to gain. Um, so, yes, Nelson, there's so much to him. And if you've never heard of Nelson Shanks, look him up. He's absolutely one of the best influences, in, especially in my upbringing. And then some of my earlier YouTube videos, probably like my first couple YouTube videos, you actually see me working this way because I was nervous. Um, I'm not really nervous at all anymore on camera because I'm just kind of used to it. It's been a long time. But in the beginning, I was nervous, especially when I would press the record button. And mind you, I wasn't even doing a live stream back then. I was just painting. So very nervous in the past. So I just referred back to what I was taught before, which was exactly this: just moving the arm around, being quick and decisive or indecisive, working with general shapes. You know, something like this would already be something that, say, a teacher would hold up in front of the class. Like Paulden would do that to me a lot, and I think that was a good way to add pressure to me. Um, I would do a start, right? It was like 20 minutes or even less than 20 minutes. Sometimes it would be like 5 minutes. And Paulden would walk around and he would pick up the start of my painting and show it to everyone, and probably like 20 people in the classroom, and he would say, you see this? This is what you're supposed to do. Work with your shapes and all that stuff. And I kind of had that pressure early on where, okay, the teacher's going to walk around and he might pick up my painting, my start, and show it to everyone. So I better not screw this up. So that was instilled in me quite early on. And it's good to practice with a little bit of pressure. It helps you develop a sense of awareness for what you're doing. A little bit of pressure is good. Paralyzing, debilitating pressure, not so good. Painting is not really like a sport where you're gonna be like, you better make that shot. If you don't make the 10 ball, you're gonna lose the match. If you lose the match, you're gonna lose, like, I don't know, you're gonna miss out on winning like $5,000 or something. It's not like that. It's not that kind of pressure. But it's very important to be able to train, practice under a little bit of pressure. It will help improve your painting tremendously. And so yeah, I had that kind of pressure when I was just starting out. I also put in all the time. Like I put in so much time. I was young. I was like very motivated. I wasn't that good. I was anxious. A lot of the time I was anxious, and sometimes I would blame my start to why painting didn't quite go well. So I would do so many different starts. Hey Stephanie Thompson, welcome. So I'm using just some paper towel, Viva brand paper towel. The ears somewhat in the middle of the eyebrow and the top of the upper eyelid. And even this is already kind of breaking away from Incaminati a little bit and kind of focusing more into Paul Hamilton, how he works, which is more definitive earlier on. John DeMartin, one of my other teachers, also works more definitive, less kind of loose and ambiguous and more specific early on. But in the end of the day, the most important thing is being able to understand your own process, your own mindset approaching the thing. Know that there's going to be a little bit of fear in the beginning, and that's okay. The more you practice, the less that fear is going to bother you. For example, my heart used to race a little bit before I would press the go live button on YouTube. And there was a time where I would do recorded videos and I would mention that one day soon I'm going to do live streams. Soon I'm going to do live streams. And it was a long time before I even did my very first live stream on YouTube. And I was terrified. I mean, I was so nervous that I was going to mess it up or say something stupid and get in trouble. That was a fear of mine that I had back in the day. But through experience, through repetition, I became less nervous and more focused. And these days, working more towards better self-discipline, like getting here at the same time, Monday and Wednesday. If you didn't know, the schedule, Mondays and Wednesdays, 6:45 p.m. Eastern and Daylight Time. So enough about me, enough about this rambling. How is everyone doing? It's almost Thanksgiving. What is everyone doing currently? How many of you are preparing for tomorrow as we speak? Preparing that turkey, getting it seasoned and all that stuff. I was going to do a turkey, but man, that turkey is $4 and something cents a pound. And all of a sudden the pork roast seemed better. It didn't cost as much. So what's everyone doing? How's everyone doing? How are you doing? Feel free to leave a comment. Tell me how you're doing. What are you up to? Tipu, you already ate the turkey. What? You got started early. All right. If only I had a turkey. But I'm telling you, if you get the pork roast, some garlic, some adobo seasoning, a little bit of sriracha and soy sauce, and some cumin, put it on 10 hours slow cook overnight, and then toast it with a sandwich with a little bit of cheese. I toast it with sandwich bread with a little bit of cheese. It makes a really nice sandwich. But the turkey was just a little too expensive. A little too expensive for me. That's why I have in-laws and parents for. They're going to do that for me. I'm just going to go and eat all their food. Oh, you did yours a few weeks back, Tipu. Beanpot, you wrote everything is done, just waiting for family. Dominic, you wrote, will you use Gamsol or medium for this portrait? Let's see, and I'm doing well. Oh, awesome. I have already used a little bit of Gamsol to thin out the paint, to get the paint to flow a little bit. This is how I was taught. This is not necessarily how I paint anymore. which is how I was taught. So yeah, I just use the smallest amount of Gamsol. Just basically dip the paint brush into the Gamsol, and it thinned it out enough for me to get the paint to move a little bit. Raw umber is transparent. It's quite transparent, so I can use it to to spread the paint across in this manner pretty easily. It's not a very opaque color. Oops, I forgot to clean a brush. This is a brush that I neglected. So I will use it as a little bit of an eraser brush. Now the terminology for this is called open grisaille. Open grisaille means a underpainting that doesn't have paint in the light, only paint in the darks. That is an open grisaille. So from Stephanie Thompson's, it sounds really tasty. It is tasty, and it's really, really cheap, really simple to do. Except now I heard that the cost of sriracha went up. That's just criminal. Like, what are you doing raising the cost of sriracha? Like, that's just not cool. Now the next step in an open grisaille, old school, the way I used to work back in the day, is to put in the dark lights with the umber and draw it like it is a charcoal drawing, and then go in with the lights only after the light and shadow is as accurate as it can be. Like you see here, I'm just using Winsor Newton. So the eraser brush has nothing on it. It's just a brush, a bristle brush, just like this one, same thing. But the bristles are a little harder because my silly self forgot to clean this brush. So if you ever forget to clean a brush, don't throw it out. Just use it as an eraser. Now, open grisaille gives you the ability to use different pressure to make things lighter or darker. As you see there, more pressure, more paint. This becomes darker. Over here, more pressure, more paint. That becomes darker. Over here, again, more pressure, more paint. It becomes darker. If I use a touch like this, less pressure will apply less paint, so it won't be as dark. Very difficult to do. If I was to try and do that with my left hand, I immediately add too much pressure. So this is based on touch, how well you can control the pressure that you put on the brush. Again, not very easy to do with your opposite hand. But you can build this experience with doing quick drawings, moving your arm quickly so that you're not stuck painting like this, the way that I have to paint with my left hand, very carefully, not being able to finesse the brush, almost to the point where I really can only do one type of pressure and at one speed. So if I switch to my correct hand, now you see I can go and move the brush around quite almost effortlessly. You build this type of touch through short poses working with simple straight lines and angles. Loosen your arm a little bit. Work through your arm and your fingers. Never with your wrist. Don't mess up your wrist. Do not do this. It will screw up your wrist if you learn to draw like that. That's why it's very important to have a teacher. Uh, I know it's quite glamorous to walk around and say that we're self-taught, but in reality, make it easier for yourself. Find a good teacher. Follow the instructions of your teacher. Put in the time, and you're gonna get really good. Hey Carl, it's late in the UK. Thanks for watching, despite it being late over there. And Monique, so you're just prepping some support to paint on. So, going to your sister's for Thanksgiving. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm supposed to go to 3 different places tomorrow. I'm supposed to see my aunt, my mom, and my mother-in-law. Although, Mom, if you're watching this, can you text me back? I called you earlier. You might be watching this. Wouldn't that be interesting if you just heard my phone? I get a text message. You're using Gamblin's Portland Gray Medium. Let's see, you wrote looks like a good neutral to you. Very good. Use what you're comfortable with. Like I said before, I was using Cobras for a while. Cobra Talons, water mixable, and I'll still use it. I'm just using traditional to get used to it again so I can compare them. I mean, I spent the whole year with that experiment. Not a whole year, sorry, almost a whole year. I started around the time that I moved into this apartment, which was in December. It's almost gonna be December. Here's what I mean, different pressure. You see, same thing, just different pressure. Now this pressure I can do with my opposite hand. So the untrained arm can do this. But try to have a looser kind of mark like this. I can barely do it even though I actually did it. I can barely do that. Barely. With my opposite hand. So the open grisaille, this method is quite reliant on how well you're able to move the brush in a loose yet controlled manner. And just like before, it's like everything, avoid detail that you do not need early on in the painting. So for the eye, pretty much just a couple of shapes. As I always used to say, keep your shapes simple and easy, such that when the time comes to make changes, those changes are simple and easy to manage. Yada yada yada. That's what I used to say a lot back in the day, which is still quite important. I just don't really mention that as much. Also, Monique, you use that for the background. Very good. Now, with how I usually paint these days, I would have already slapped some color on there and started to add some planes. But this is how I was brought up. We're going back to the old school. This is a much safer way of working. The 6 hours of gesture drawings, by the way, was done with charcoal, soft vine charcoal. Why was it done with soft vine charcoal? Because soft vine charcoal is the most painterly drawing medium there is, because it's messy, it's loose. Just like working with oil paint. And when I say oil paint, I basically mean traditional, because water mixable will not erase like this with a dry brush, which is not a bad thing, it's just different. With water mixable, it pretend dries, so what it does is it stays, and it doesn't move, it just stays there. It's much easier to go into the subtleties with water mixable than traditional. Traditional is quite sloppy, it moves around a lot. It leans itself more towards the loose painter, the painter that wants to work with big shapes, straight lines and angles like this. Now, next question for everyone. Question I'm going to ask is, what TV show are you currently watching? Something a little different. I told you last time. So my wife and I were going through Star Wars in the order that they were released. So now we're at I think episode 1, and it was wild to me. I freaked out when I saw that they actually used the actor for Anakin Skywalker in the ending of Return of the Jedi. I was like, what? Was this added afterwards? Like, I didn't even know. What are you watching? Are you I mean, like a TV show wise? I know that if you're watching this live, you're currently watching this, but what are you binge watching these days? Now, 33 minutes is a long time. It's a very long time to be working on an Umber sketch. So this is about as accurate as I have the patience to be. I usually don't care that much about the accuracy in the beginning, which is contrary to Studio Incaminati and Paulden. Studio Incaminati is all about the start. They call it the art of the start. Being loose, being free, working with freedom. Freedom! Yes, working with freedom. And Paulden is all about getting the light and shadow, light and shade. And John the Martin, all about light and shadow, light and shade. Get your light and shadow shapes as accurate as they could possibly be. He would say that his teacher would tell him, you must earn the right to shade. Earn the right to shade. Very similar to Incaminati, but Incaminati starts with shade, basically. They throw shade in the beginning. No, I'm just kidding. They start with shadows very early on, like this. Let's see, Kenneth. Been watching Ink Master. Oh, cool. I haven't seen that, but I'd be terrified to to do that to anyone. Work with ink. Made the neck a little long. That shape, not just a little long, way long. This needs to go all the way up here. Whoops. Yeah, this would be very difficult to do with the Cobras with water mixable. It's not necessarily a bad thing that I can't do this with Cobra, it's just different. For example, Cobra has an advantage in that you can put a line down and it's going to stay there. It doesn't wipe off like this does. But this has an advantage in the sense that it's easier to maneuver. Let's see, Stephanie has started watching the series of Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix. Cool. I haven't seen that, but it's promoted a lot on my Netflix. You're looking forward to that, Monique. Kenneth, you liked the Ink Master for the artistry. Cool. Yeah, gotta check it out. Lately, I like to watch ghost stories, so documentaries. When I'm practicing pool, which I do, I try to do at least every day, 3 to 4 hours. I'm a member of a billiard academy. That 24-hour, I have 24-hour access to a billiard academy, so that's where I go at like 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. And I stay there about 3 or 4 hours till I gotta do painting work. But anyway, I've been watching. Recently, I watched the top frightening places in the UK, and there was one about Edinburgh. I think that's UK. I'm not quite sure. You'd be able to tell me. There was a haunted poltergeist of some sort at a building from the 17th century. Lots of ghost stories are in the UK. I didn't know. Way more than in the US of A, but that's just because we're new compared to everything else, I guess. But I like ghost stories. How big is the reference photo? It's on my iPad right below here. It's a little smaller than the painting. I have it below. I usually have it to the side, but my easel that was holding it fell down, and I don't feel like messing with that again. So it's a little smaller, but it could be any size. Hey Carl, Edinburgh is in the UK. Oh, good. I got that right. Of course, it's in Scotland. That's where John McGeekin is. John, are you still here? I haven't heard from you since you said hello. Yeah, I watched the documentary on the original House of the Conjuring, and then the Blair Witch. All while I'm trying to run racks of 9-ball. Okay, I've spent way too long, 40 minutes, on this open grisaille. Way too long, way too slow. Incredibly slow. And I usually use my eraser brush. I guess I used to use the eraser brush for the first color. And by the way, the first color, what am I doing? I'm using an orange and white. So I used yellow ochre, this is cadmium red vermilion from Williamsburg. But you can use whatever red you want. I can use alizarin if I want to, I don't care. And make sure you combine the complements. So this is Terra Vert, but it could be any green. It really doesn't matter. Just use an orange white, green, and you can make something that looks like a skin color. Now, my teacher, Paulden Hamilton, told me that I have a tendency to make skin color look like a band-aid. So one of these days I'm going to get a band-aid and I'm going to put it next to the palette and I'm going to make sure that it doesn't look like a band-aid. But this is going to be the first color, and what it's going to do is it's going to cover the light, and we're going to use the tone of the canvas to be somewhat, let's add some cadmium yellow just for fun. Anyway, we're going to let the tone of the canvas play a part in some of the midtones. This is terribly slow, and this is not how I like to paint anymore, but I'm doing it anyway because I want to show you the old school and how I've changed since the old school and since the old school days. Let's see. So, Tipu, you wrote, what's the, The subject? It's just a Nelson Shanks painting. I just took one of the first ones that I saw. If you look up Nelson Shanks, this painting will show up. Just a Nelson Shanks. And I am not brave enough yet to turn this into a footman. In case anyone from Monday is here, you'd catch the reference about footman. But yeah, not quite brave enough yet. Okay, John, I'm glad you're still here. Okay, so now I'm going to use the tone of the canvas to be some of the midtones as the paint starts to get thinner. So less pressure makes this not as light. Not easy to do. Watch this epic failure. Well, actually, that's not so bad. But it's very difficult to do if you don't have practice doing this. More pressure, that's lighter, and I'm using my opposite hand. Less pressure makes this not as light. Well, I guess I can do this with my left hand, but I just can't move the brush around as much. Yep, that's just way too slow. But anyway, I did a painting with my opposite hand, I don't know, 2 weeks ago or something. And of course, we didn't use this method because I would never be able to do this with my opposite hand. But we went with direct painting, working with color directly. Of course, I mean, this is direct painting, but it's a different version of it. But this requires a more practice with how much pressure you apply onto the brush. Now this is one of the safest ways to start a painting, and this is what they refer to in Studio and Caminati as a duotone, which means two tones, which they claim is actually false. Nelson Shanks would call it a duotone when he would start a painting like this, but a duotone, this is not two tones. I am using the tone of the canvas to do some of the work, turn into some midtones. And obviously we're starting this painting this way because we're going to build it up much in the sense that Nelson would have. Um, Much in the sense that this approach leans itself towards that more kind of carefully finished academic kind of painting. A common question that usually shows up whenever a teacher at Incominati would do a demo is, would you start this painting differently if you had more time? Most of the time, they would do a demo in about 4 hours, which to me is a really long time because I do these streams in only an hour each. But um, the way that they work, of course, takes longer than the way that I work. But um, obviously, as you see, this is taking forever. But their answer would be yes. They would take more time with this stage, with a light and shadow stage. That's what they would do differently because they usually move a little bit faster when they're doing a demo. Nelson Shanks, probably not. I think he would start it however he wanted because he was Nelson Shanks. He could start the painting with his left hand if he wanted to and then finish it from there. Which I definitely couldn't. I would struggle. But that would be an interesting challenge. Someone that you see use this approach a lot, the dual tone studio and Caminati kind of way of starting a painting is Robert Liberace. Does anybody know of Robert Liberace here? When I was in high school, my high school teacher, her name was Sharon Sefton, I think. She first introduced me to realist painting by showing me some paintings done by Robert Liberace. He is a local here, Northern Virginia. I met him once or twice when I was in school in Philly. Big time painter in this area and in the world. He's actually related to the original Liberace. But anyway, I think he uses this type of start. Big time painter. He's very famous. Paintings sell for a lot of money. So Monique, you took a drawing workshop with him. Oh, awesome. Oh, Stephanie, I haven't heard of him. Yeah, Robert Liberace. He is. I call them Hollywood painters. Very famous. Very successful. Very good painter. But yeah, he tends to use this kind of approach. I don't know what he's doing currently. I haven't really looked at any of his paintings since like 2015. So I really don't know what he's up to. I think his kids are now artists as well, probably young up and coming superstars. I won't speak of things I don't know about, so I really don't know currently what he's up to, but I know that in the past I would see some of his paintings that were started pretty much like this in the dual tone kind of fashion. Carl, you're a big fan of Liberace. Awesome. I bought a demo of his once a long time ago. I really like when he talks. He like moves his hands, scatter the paint around, like kind of like be animated like that. And his accent, whenever he would quote Italian things, bravado, bravado. His accent, pretty cool. Very cool guy. Very nice person when you meet him in real life. Um, I think I was with Robin Fry, the artist that one of the Nelson Shanks students that I lived with her in Philly, and we picked Robert Liberace up from the airport, and he filmed a demo, a figure painting demo at Studio Incaminati, and I think we ate dinner with him or something. I don't remember that much. I'd have to ask Robin. Um, Very nice guy. Absolutely genuine guy. Very nice. I'm glad you like my impressions, Monique. Hey, US, ALI, USA. How long it takes to be a painting artist, to be an artist? It takes about as much time as you're willing to put into it. And if you have the right training, and it doesn't have to be me, there's so many resources out there. Um, Basically, if you can get really good at light and shadow, you will accelerate your painting tremendously. It's like pool. If anybody knows about pool, if you work on your stroke, if you have a really good stroke, really good fundamentals, early on, it skyrockets you like nothing else. Light and shadow, believe me, you can get really good in about 2 years. I've seen it happen. Some of my students, um, Kathy has gotten extremely good really fast in about 2 years. Angela, um, so many of them. Ellen, John McGeekin, you got really good really fast. Just the right training, put in the time. I'm telling you, probably 2 years, you're gonna be really good in 2 years. I mean, really, you can do better than this in 2 years, and this is like nothing for you. This is like a piece of cake kind of start. Like to me, I'm holding back purposefully. I'm slowing myself down purposefully. Like to me, this is nothing. Like this kind of start to me is nothing. Am I saying I did it right? No, I messed up. That angle of the nose is not correct. The eyes are slanted a bit too much. I know I've made some mistakes here. Does it bother me? No, because I know that when I go in with more information, more color, I'll be able to correct because of all the experience. But you'll get really good if you focus on light and shadow. And Monique, yep, learning how to see and mix values is key for you. Yes, learning how to see. Nelson would say that painting is the art of seeing, learning how to see. However, if you cannot see, if you're blind, you can still paint. You won't paint representational, but what you'll do is use your sense of touch. You'll use your sense of rhythm, and you can still paint even if you can't see. Um, Touch, right? The movement of touch, like being able to move my hand this way. I just can't do that with my left hand. Um, there's so much more to painting. But yeah, being able to see, learning how to see is quite important. Seeing in sequence. Nelson would say, seeing the big picture before getting hung up on minutia. And now I can actually go into And this is totally unnecessary, but I'm going to do it anyway because this is how I was taught. I'm going to add more white to this, and I can go in and put in some highlights here and there. What would Robert Liberace say? He likes to use the word dapple. Dapple some highlights here and there, he would say. And I'm not making fun of him. I really appreciate him and what he's done for the art world these days. Very genuine guy, very good guy. What would he call it? Bravura, bravura. Boom, bravura, bravura. Boom, bravura, bravura. However he would say it. Hey, mouse. Oh, thank you. So we should clean that palette. Oh, believe me, this paint has been here for 14 years. This, you hear that? That awful sound. Just like the Frank Sinatra sound. That awful sound. Bang, bang. Awful sound. Yeah. That is 14 years old dry paint on that palette, which I'm sure I could take off with a knife. But why would I do that? Just leave it on there. Let it be. So why am I going with these lights? Because this is what you see. If you look up duotone, Studio Incaminati, look up duotone. Just look up one of Robert Liberace's starts. It's somewhat like this. I'm not as good as Liberace. I'm nowhere near his abilities, but it's the same kind of language. Same kind of language. I'm pretty sure Liberace has put in way more time than I have in his upbringing. I got distracted a lot when I was younger. If you would have met me when I was 19, 20, I would have been like painting. And then I just got into other things like motorcycles, got into math, got back into rollerblading. I went through a lot of different times in my life. I'm sure Liberace had put in way more time. Either that or he was just really gifted. And it is weird for me to do this because I know I don't need it. I don't need to work this slow because I know that I can just throw on some color, move it around, and create form. It's much faster, much more efficient, but this is safer. And just for the nostalgia, really. This is more for nostalgia. So although you learned that a chromatic gray is just wonderful. There's so much that starting out with a gray can help you out with. Well, for one, portrait, skin tones are usually warm. I mean, unless you're talking about the Blue Man group or something like that. Usually warm. Warm over cool brings out the warmth of anything. So it's easier with this. Plus, Nelson would say having a gray tone makes your lights look like lights and your darks look like darks. That's exactly what he would say. Let's see. So, Carl, what time does this finish, and will it be available after the live? Oh, yeah. It'll be available as a live or as a pre-recorded video. YouTube kind of does that automatically. I don't really have a say in that. Yeah. This ends pretty soon, actually. This ends in about This usually goes on for an hour, sometimes more. Depends. Like if I'm doing an alla prima, like last time, I'll go an hour and a half or so. But for this, about an hour, so it's gonna end soon. And once this dries, which it should, by by next time we return, which will be Monday, we'll go into the forms, working with big planes all around, just like I was taught back in the day. But I held back on purpose, focused on what was taught to me in the beginning, and I'll tell you why I have moved past this. Not saying that what I'm doing is better than this. I'm just saying that I've found faster, more efficient ways to paint. But yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Yeah, no problem, Carl. So, for example, why is this start? And rarely will you see me downplay my own start, but why is this start not as useful to me anymore? It's not as useful because what matters more is, in my opinion, now this is contrary to how I was taught, contrary to Studio and Caminati. Nothing wrong with them, they're amazing, and I support them completely. But to me, everything is in the start is not true. I don't find that to be true. I believe that it's all about the middle game, what goes on in the middle stages. So, what I like to do is get to the middle as fast as possible, no matter how awkward it may look. The middle stages, and if you saw my Halloween special, the Caravaggio, I just started out with the color, the dark of the background, and I threw in just some kind of ghost looking thing for the skin color, and then we went straight into planes. I like to get to the middle as fast as possible because to me, it's all about the middle, not about the beginning or the end. The end is actually important too. I'd say the middle and the end are more important than the beginning. Uh, for me, because I've been painting for a long time. Now, for someone that's just getting started, for you watching this, the beginning is more important for you than the middle or the end, because, as Nelson would say, you can't begin finished, which is redundant, but he said that to prove a point, to make it very clear, because he was an excellent speaker. For a beginner, if you have a strong beginning, the more practice you have, the stronger your middle and your ending will be. As an advanced painter or somebody that's been painting for a long time, you know how to finish a painting, you know how to do the middle stages, so you can start with anything you want. And the key, this is the catch, the key is efficiency. If I were to start a painting like this every time and take this long to get this far every time, people would get bored of me. I think that you'd get bored if it took me this long to start a painting. I think. I don't know that to be true. It's a conjecture. It's a statement without a proof. I don't know. But it's something that I am conscientious of. And I also get real bored real fast. So starting like this all the time would probably make me bored. So I like to add a little element of danger, a little bit of something more or less chaotic than this when I usually start. As you see, this start is easy for me. This is absolutely almost nothing. I can start a painting like this without any kind of trouble because I've just been doing this for years. Hey Shabu, thanks for the hearts. Yes, all their beginning. Excellent. You are a very, very keen observer. Um, the beginning is absolutely drawing and values. 100%. That's what the beginning is all about. Now, I don't do that so much anymore with most of my live streams. In fact, if you remember this one, if you remember the wolf from last time, this was done in about an hour and a half. It's not a portrait, but I mean, same kind of stuff. I started out with the highlights of this part of the painting first after I did the outline. That's more efficient than this. This just takes a long time, but it's very safe. It's a very safe way of working. I think Shabu, thank you. But yes, trip down memory lane was needed. And I wanted to do this because I was using this palette. So with this very palette, 14 years ago, I was scared to start a portrait, terrified to start a portrait. This very palette, I painted my first portrait painting from life of my mom, which if you're watching this, can you text me? Send me a text message because I need to know my schedule for Thanksgiving. Anyway, and I started that first portrait painting from life with this palette. So nostalgia, really, long time ago. And that painting went terribly. That painting went really bad. But that's how you learn. You learn through your experiences. My God, this is slow. Such a slow process. I think that should be good for the start of this one. Like I said, old school, real old school. Let's see, older you wrote. I agree. I find myself it takes more time to do so in wonderful, more efficient ways, like you mentioned, because beginning does take time. Oh yeah, for sure. But get comfortable with quick drawings. That will train muscle memory. That will add muscle memory to your arm. Pretty much like if a pool player, the stroke, how they move how they swing their arm. I'm supposing it's the same with like a baseball player or something. Used to swinging your arm like a golf player, swinging your arm. Muscle memory, very important. It's important to have a sense of touch because when you get into the finishing stuff, this kind of finesse is still a thing. It still plays a role. But yeah, that should be good. And it's all right for an hour. I mean, to me, it's incredibly slow, but it shows you how I began painting when I was younger, how I was taught, and how efficient light and shadow is in conveying the likeness of the model. Also, it's easier to build onto this. Going into the subtleties and the values and the colors and all that stuff is going to be much easier to build onto this than starting off with a painting that has no outlines. Kind of like we did with this one. This was 100% palette knife. To me, this looks like absolute garbage, but I started this with palette. This whole thing was painted with palette knife. So I could not go in with lines like this. I just couldn't go in with lines. And like the painting that I did with my left hand, completely with my left hand, was this one. I went in completely with my left hand, and to me this doesn't look that good either, but I could not go in with lines. I had to go in with shapes because my left hand just doesn't have that sense of touch. So eventually, the paintings end up reaching a more refined level like this one, more careful refinement. But in order to get here, it doesn't matter how you start, at least to me. You could start any way you want with enough experience. However, as an absolute beginner, I would highly suggest using a more classical approach if you are a beginner. Classical approach will get you better faster than using straight up color and all that stuff. I did a lot of talking this time, I think. I had a lot to say. This palette brought back a lot of memories from the old days. So forgive me if I was speaking a little bit too much this time. So Alder, you wrote, or no, Carl, you wrote, sorry I missed this at the beginning, but is this wooden board canvas or something else? This is cotton canvas. It's mounted onto, it's just one of those cheap cotton canvas panels. It's just Artist Loft. Pretty cheap. Just like I started when I was younger. But you could work on anything you want. The best would probably be like a linen panel. Yeah, something like this. Linen panel. This would probably be better. But this is just fine. Like you can do a lot of stuff with that. Oh, thanks, Monique. I'm glad you liked the demo. So Alder, you wrote. I found out that more you can soften your values or edges makes for an excellent impact. Yes, very good. Very observant. Yes. The more contrast you have in your edges and your values, the more impact, the more depth you'll have in your painting. Absolutely. Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Carl. Of course. Thanks, John. Yeah, John, hopefully we can connect again on Zoom. I got an email from you. I responded to you, and then I didn't see any other emails. So I don't know if it went into spam or something, but hopefully we can connect sometime soon. I'd love to talk to you on Zoom, see how you're doing. I hope everything's all right. But yeah, we can talk on Zoom. So this will be the point where I'll ask if there are any last minute questions. And of course I gotta bring Hugo. Oh, you did respond, John. Now I gotta double check. I think it must have went to my spam again. Stephanie, okay, no problem. You wrote the painting is coming along beautifully. I want to try to catch you in the next one. Oh, good. I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving as well. So as usual, Hugo, who's getting really big now, is going to come by to say hello. This is Hugo, the Shiba Inu. Says, what are you doing over here? Said, I hope you all have a good Thanksgiving. Don't forget to send us some super chats in the future to help me get some more treats. That's what Hugo was saying. He's gonna have his 1 year birthday next month. He turns 1 year December 15th. Oh, thanks, Alder. Oh, it's 1 a.m. That's late. Thanks for joining, Carl. So remember, everyone, the schedule is Mondays and Wednesdays, 6:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So once again, I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Don't forget, if you want to take your online art education with me further, please check out my online classes on my Patreon, which is listed in the description box of this video. Online classes start at just $5 a month, gets you into still life class on Mondays. I wish you all the very best, and I'll see you on the next one.